AI is mostly benefiting these smaller brands and maybe like less popular like niches and industries.
I think there is, in certain niches, lower competition on the AI side.
I think, in my opinion, it really comes down to discovery. It might be a good way for them to like discover your brand and then go check you out and then like check out your products and eventually buy.
Like, you can ask the same question 100 times and you're going to get different answers every time.
Like, how can a store owner make sure that they're doing the right things? Welcome to Off the Record E-commerce. I'm Leighton Taylor.
And I'm Patrick Rice.
And today we're going to be talking about agentic commerce. And I guess another way to say that is how AI is impacting e-commerce today and what store owners should be thinking about in terms of how to get the most out of it, how to grow your business using AI, and kind of some of the recent news and developments related to that.
Yeah, and I also just want to talk with you, Leighton, about just overall high level, like AI in e-commerce, the success rate of that, what it actually looks like right now. Because this is something that Shopify is obviously pushing really aggressively. Like .dev was all about agentic stuff, but then we're not seeing it, hugely in the sales attribution or anything. And so, and I also find ChatGPT even has some glitches sometimes when I'm like actually trying to shop with it. So it's like super early days as well. So it's like, I'm curious on just where does it fit in an overall marketing strategy? Like, how do you think about that as well? Or in like kind of like a brand itself, like how should they think about that in terms of investment, advertising, that kind of thing? Those are the pieces that I oftentimes think about.
Yeah.
And then how do you actually go about implementing that at a technical level, which I'm very curious about asking you some questions.
Yeah. So I think, like you said, there's been a lot of hype around agentic commerce and I think there are a lot of unknowns because like OpenAI has been coming out with things like these, I think they actually partnered with Shopify on their integration. And, like I think maybe even last year sometime they announced this like actual checkout like in ChatGPT, that sort of thing, which didn't really pan out so far. Like, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but that hasn't really become a thing that people are actually using or that works very well. So I think in my opinion, it really comes down to discovery. So people who are researching or maybe are trying to like learn about a topic and then decide what to buy, but they're probably not going to buy directly in their AI tool, but it might be a good way for them to like discover your brand and then go check you out and then like check out your products and eventually buy. So I think it's maybe a bit more, it's not like a direct like show an ad and like get a purchase right away, that sort of thing. At least not yet. And maybe that'll change. I think part of it is people's habits and like do they trust an AI tool or an agent to go off and buy something for them? Not yet, really.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Because a lot of like the UCP, Universal
Commerce protocol.
Yeah, commerce protocol. A lot of that is like on actually like having the agent buy for you too. And so I think of a lot of like the Alexa kind of stuff, where you're just sort of like, Alexa, buy a light bulb for me, or buy a, AAA battery, like that kind of stuff, where as you have more voice control in AI systems, I think could be pretty useful. Like if I want something objective and, there's not like a lot of like, I don't really care about the quality. If I'm buying like a laptop, I'm not just gonna trust an AI to buy it for me. But if I'm buying something more just kind of generic, that I don't care, if it does the thing, it does the thing.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting that I came across as I was preparing for our conversation today is that AI is mostly benefiting these smaller brands and maybe like less popular like niches and industries. And I think that kind of makes sense because it's things that people are less familiar with that they're talking to their AI tool about to like learn about it before they decide what to buy. And we talked about this, I think, in the past related to like using tents as an example. If you're buying for camping, you might not know like what are the options, what materials are there, like what features should I even be concerned about versus not, like where should I be willing to invest more versus not. And if it's something that's technical or less familiar or a larger purchase, then you're probably going to want to do a lot of like research and planning before you just go on Amazon and like buy the first thing that you see. So I think that makes sense that AI is going to be useful in that like stage of the discovery process.
I've also seen this is with one of our clients that is doing the most in AI revenue on the agentic sort of storefront. area in Shopify. They are a small seller, like a one-person operation, small, very niche. And I think there is, in certain niches, lower competition on the AI side. And just kind of interesting because, as you mentioned, it's a place where occasionally smaller sellers can compete. And especially if they have unique, smaller products and ones that are well optimized for a particular context. So like this one is, I won't give away the niche, but it's for elderly people, right? So it's like X for elderly, and it works pretty well. Um, and so like if you have something kind of specific where it's for XYZ, and I think you see the same thing on the SEO front as well, where you can really kind of dominate and get a lot of revenue from those more niche products and niche topics. And so on the agentic side, I do see that popping up. And then, yeah, when I think about my own use, I find it much, much more just like research, where I might be researching stuff, getting like the top brands, kind of getting an understanding and layout of the land, and then not necessarily buying right there on. I've actually never done that, right? And so that's where it's so interesting on like the future looking part is, well, you want some visibility there. You want to make sure that you have your stuff set up as needed, and occasionally it can lead to decent revenue, but it's definitely like an in between. And I'm so curious to see how society starts buying and using AI within the purchasing experience, talking to other people how they're using it, and then as tools get better at tracking. Actually, a buddy of mine created a tool called Whistler Analytics, and it's really cool because it actually takes like the Shopify order and it connects it directly with the IP on like the AI side, and it can get better attribution than a lot of what other ones can do. So it from what I've seen with him, we're working with him on one client, and it does some pretty cool stuff. So I imagine we're going to get more analytics and more kind of understanding of some of that user journey over time.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if eventually the major AI companies start offering some kind of like, UTM tracking or some way to like allow the people who are getting traffic from their tools to attribute it back to them, because it probably benefits them, especially if they're selling ads, which
ChatGPT is right now.
I guess we're probably talking more about.
Yeah, I imagine like at some point you might see like an impression count. So like with Google, you already have an impression count now in Google Search Console. So you can see your AI performance in Google Search Console there. And that's just an impression level. And they give you just the URL. And that's on AI overviews and stuff like that. So like we're starting to get some like kind of impression counts and stuff like that, but it's still very early.
Yeah, and I think there are third-party tools you can use now that try to monitor, how visible you are in the different AI tools. It's different from like the equivalent for SEO. I think to test, because like every query, every question somebody asks in AI is unique and different. It's not like they're using the same keywords as much as they are in the search engine. And so you can't say like, oh, today we're ranking number 5 in ChatGPT for this keyword. Like it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But I think the way some of these tools work is they'll like, if you tell it, I mean, I haven't used one. Maybe you have, and you can speak to this more. But yeah, have you? Do you want to kind of summarize how that works?
Yeah. So I've used several different tools, and then I've also developed my own with Claude.
Okay.
Because I was like, these tools are too expensive, so I just developed my own. And the vibe coding world nowadays. And so they're very interesting. Like in terms of being able to evaluate at a surface level how often you show up. They're all probabilistic, so you can't determine whether, like, you can ask the same question 100 times and you're going to get different answers every time. And the orders of which if you say, can you recommend me, the best XYZ for this? Like, the order is going to be different most of the times. There's going to be so much variation. But what you'll notice if you just search it 100 times is that you do have a consensus. And I think that SEO has been doing this for a while as well, like Google has on the search engine side, is that these tools, for whatever reason, they do come up to a consensus on sort of what they believe is a weird way to say it, but what in their training data and in the web searches and what's online, like they come to a kind of consensus, and you'll see that in like, hey, they offer this. Usually it's one company they offer a lot, right? So they'll have one company they offer a lot, and then they'll have like, you know, three or so companies that are just like, you know, you keep seeing them. And that's what these tools are trying to track, just like so you can have some data.
Mhm.
But honestly, it's not bad for like if you're just trying to like get a grip on things in a small way, like literally just open up an incognito mode, like open up a bunch of windows, like search it. You just don't want it to get personalized information to understand that it's you, because then they're gonna like, you know, change the results for you. But
Mhm.
you'll see how they kind of have like a consensus on these are the top brands in this niche. And then after like the consensus, as I would think about it, those like kind of top brands, and that's just how I would think about it. I might be wrong, so correct me if that's not the right way of thinking about it. But it in that way, and then there's like a long tail of like just because there's so much variability. There's like a long tail of brands, like, you know, the 4 or 5 brands that it recommends a lot, and then like just like a million other brands that it like randomly will recommend, like one out of 100 times they'll recommend some random company you've never heard of in the world. Like it could be a fake company, right?
Mhm.
Like that's just the way AI is. And so the ones I've used to be more explicit is Profound, my own tool that's like just internal to make it cheaper. Peak, and then Local Dominator is actually another one that has an AI tracker. Overall, they're useful for what they do. They give you that number and they can see it over time, and that's pretty useful because you do see those things change sometimes, and you want to be aware of it and monitoring it.
Yeah. So it's probably a good time to start getting into, practically speaking, like how can a store owner make sure that they're doing the right things? And I think there's a huge range here. Everything from these things that'll take you 30 seconds to go in on the back end of Shopify and just make sure that the setting is configured the right way, to things in the middle that might take you a few hours to a few days to do. And then on the high end, maybe things that are highly custom built agents that are like on the front end of your store, interacting with customers. And that's kind of less likely that you really need to do that. You know, we actually are building something like that for one of our clients, but I'd
Mhm.
say like the cliche 80/20 of like what most people should do, there's like some really basic stuff. So maybe we can just like
Mm.
talk through some of those like core essentials that are actually pretty easy.
Yeah.
So one is like, and a lot of this Shopify does automatically for you. So if you log into the backend of your Shopify store, if you go to sales channels, you should now see a sales channel there called Agentic. So just click on that and look at it. And you should see that the Shopify catalog there has already like ingested your products and is showing them in the Shopify catalog. And that's kind of how your product data then gets exposed to these AI tools. So that's one thing, is just like go in there and make sure that your products are there. Shopify catalog does have some requirements that your products have to meet to be shown. Like it has to have a price greater than 0, it has to have at least one image. But all pretty much stuff that like most products, most stores are just gonna kind of meet by default for anything that you would actually want to sell. One cool thing that I'm seeing there, that we're gonna actually be discussing with some of our clients soon, is there's something called Shopify Knowledge Base. And
Hmm.
I'm curious if you've used this much, Patrick, or have interacted with it much. But it's a Shopify built app that you can install, and then it allows you to like build out sort of an FAQ. It actually generates the FAQ for you automatically about your store policies and your products and
Hmm.
stuff. But then you can go in and customize it, and then it'll also track like how many queries in the AI tools did your store like show up for,
Hmm.
and then were there any queries that that showed up, but that your knowledge base didn't actually have the information that was needed. So then you can go in there and you can fill it in. So
Hmm.
if somebody has a question that relates to your store, then you kind of want to make sure that that content is filled in. So that, that might take a few hours to go through and kind of think through what kinds of questions and answers should we put in here.
Hmm.
But that's a pretty cool thing. You can just build on the back end easily now.
Yeah.
And it's not visible on the front end of your store. It's not like an FAQ page, which you probably should have anyway. But this is just on the back end for these AI tools to crawl and find that information.
Hmm. Yeah. 100%. And that can be pretty useful. We've set it up, haven't done a ton with it. I believe it's primarily for when people are asking about your specific brand. And
Mhm.
so if which people do, right? They may ask a question like, is XYZ legit? What is their free shipping? What is this? So for some of the reputation stuff, because you do need to, consider reputation in general with online marketing. And so like if the AI gets snagged on, some Reddit post that an angry customer posted or whatever, like you can have it say some bad things about you. And you do want to be careful with that because those can get surfaced in the Google results as well. And I imagine just having some of this knowledge-based content here that's directly connected with OpenAI would be useful for those things.
Yeah, and one interesting thing to note is that currently that agentic commerce channel integrates with ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, and then it looks like Perplexity, but it doesn't look like it's currently natively working with Claude. But then I think there's I think through the Google and YouTube sales channel, you can make your data available to Gemini. So it's like a different app on the back end of Shopify to kind of expose it to the different AI models.
Yeah. And that product catalog area you're mentioning is so important because you can also go in there and like you're saying is that you can check the variables and how they're mapped together.
Yeah.
And you can preview how it looks. So you can check out what data you're sending to OpenAI and Shopify and these other platforms, as you mentioned, for their catalog to just structure data, product feed for them to crawl and have, their products there. And so that's the most useful information that you can get because you can just say, okay, here's the data I'm giving them. What do they want? Well, like if I'm an AI crawling the Shopify catalog for like all stores and I get a query like, what is the best, XYZ for elderly people or for, I have back pain or, some kind of context. Well, if that's mentioned in the product description, then you're probably going to have a benefit there. If there's relevant data in the category, title, anything around there, then that's going to be a little snare that the AI can pick up.
Yeah. So if you're in the agentic channel over on, at least right now at the time of recording, this might change, but over on the right side, there's a box called sources. And then at the bottom of that, there's a box where you click a little button and it opens a pop-up that shows you the catalog mapping and lets you say, okay, pull the title from the product title field, pull the description from the description field, pull the category. But you can tweak those if you want to. So I think the use case here might be, let's say you want to use one version of your titles on the website, but you want to show a different version or pull from a different like set of data for AI tools. You could use a meta field for that, let's say. But then I think another key thing is going, well, you want to make sure that all of your products have those fields populated, particularly the category. I think that's one that some people probably don't have filled out. Most people have titles and descriptions already, but you want to make sure that the category is specified because that helps the AI tools know like what kind of product is this and kind of map it to the right query when someone's asking about it.
Mhm.
And then when you're in the product editor in Shopify, when you assign a category, if you scroll down, you'll see these suggested category meta fields. And it's things
Yeah.
like color, material, size, power source, whatever meta fields are actually relevant to that category. And you want to fill in as much detail there as you can, which is going to be useful not only for these AI tools, but you can actually use it on your storefront as well, like for filtering or whatever. So it's kind of a win-win. But I'd say that's kind of the thing that's basic, and it's not hard to do. It's just time consuming to go in there and like fill in that data for all of your products.
Mhm.
Which there probably are ways to speed that up by doing it in bulk or even using AI tools to help you fill it in. But I'd say that's an important one that you don't want to neglect.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And so like there's just the product data that you're sending to Shopify. So, there's not really any limits. Like you could write a 2,000 word essay in your product description if you want. So as far as I know, there's no like limit or spam rules or anything right now. So like you might write your descriptions a little different for AI now. You might consider just what data you're sending to their system. And so that's sort of the first easiest way that you can start considering about optimizing for agentic commerce. And then beyond that, it's still heavily based off of online data. So, still the way that they process a question like best product for whatever is they have their product catalog, and this is as I understand it, right? But they have their product catalog, which is the structured data of millions, if not billions, of Shopify products, and this huge catalog. But they're running queries on Google, Bing, their internal search engine, whatever they're using. They're searching the internet, and they're not searching, but they have their own training database with a lot of different brands and products and stuff like that. So they're essentially using the catalog, online research, which is pretty much just SEO. So searching, what is the best for XYZ 2026, and then scraping the results and using that as context to, hey, 10 people said this product was the best. So, let me look at that, see if we have some good data on it. And then they also have their training data that they update I think it's quarterly or every 6 months, something like that for most of the AIs, which is it's essentially Common Crawl, which is just a big database of internet resources. So a little bit too high level, but that's what I understand of the basics. Does that kind of correlate with what your understanding is?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think it comes down to the basic product content, titles and descriptions, and then the category meta fields, the SKU and the GTIN, so that agents can understand if this is the same product that somebody else might sell, or kind of how it fits into the scheme of things. And I think being specific and concise, and probably using things like bullet lists in your descriptions can help. So don't give these vague descriptions about your products. Be very specific about the details of what kind of material is this, what are the specs, to where I think AI it likes those concrete details more than this sort of flowery language. And I think bulleted lists and meta fields tend to probably get processed more easily than long paragraphs of information.
Yeah, that might be the case. So what we see in SEO for many years now, or at least the last few years, is that Google really does prefer declarative content. And usually what works for Google seems to be kind of working for the AI engines. And declarative content, the SEO people, the nerdy SEO people call it, what is it? EAV. I think EAV or semantic triplets, all these, confusing names. But it's essentially just for example, if you're writing an FAQ, you make it as machine readable as possible. What is XYZ? XYZ is. You're what is a pen? A pen is a stick that you write stuff with. I don't even know how to say that. Such a general term. But what a lot of people end up doing is that they their product description might be really fluffy, or really even artistic. Unfortunately, the machines don't prefer, at least Google does not prefer artsy language. So do it, it's your brand, so make sure you're using your brand voice and stuff. But at the same time, if it's this pillow reminds you of a waterfall that during a peak rain season in the Sahara, Africa, whatever, then it's probably not gonna work that well. While if you say maybe you could have that sentence somewhere, but if you're saying very declarative, sort of, this pillow is, these are its attributes, this is its dimensions, having that stuff pretty well articulated and all the core ideas around it just very clearly articulated in a somewhat, some people would call it bland, but just a somewhat, information dense kind of way. That's what works best for the search engines. So, adapt it with your brand and what makes sense for you. But if you want to target the AIs in the search engines, that kind of language works better.
Yeah. And I think there's probably a parallel with human shoppers and browsers who, there's probably some benefit in the right kind of sales copy that is a bit more flowery, but it still has to be pretty clear and to the point. You don't want somebody to have to be scratching their head, wait, what are they saying here?
Yeah.
So yeah, and maybe there's kind of a sort of an artistic balance that'll come into play here, where how can we still show our brand voice and talk about the human features and benefits in a way that is selling, while also getting to the point and being friendly to the machines that are reading this.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
a
that's
common idea in SEO for many years has been separating SEO and CRO, and just making a strict delineation between them, because sometimes it is hard to have both, right?
Right.
And so like sometimes you have to have both, but like a way that people might do it is like if you have a sales landing page, usually the best language for like sales copywriting is not like if you're like trying to sell a course or whatever, like the course landing pages, like they're usually not, they're usually very, like telling a story or something like that. And so you can have that aspect like at the top, and then like hide a lot of the SEO content like down at the bottom or something like that. You even see that somewhat in ecom with like the most important text for customers is going to be like the top of the collection page or the home page, and then having like content lower down or in the FAQs or something like that. That's a little bit more focused on, or at least more considering search engines and AI engines.
Mm-hmm.
That can be
yeah,
helpful.
yeah, it makes
So
sense.
you can also sometimes separate this, and like you could even separate it even more with like on product pages. I mean, you can essentially have like the main product description, front and center, super obvious to customers, and then like a product description or like an accordion way near the bottom that like, goes way in more into, who is this good for? Here are different, contextual elements of it. Like, who is this good for? Who is this not good for? Whatever else. And those can have a lot of content. You can push that into the meta field for your agentic stuff, and then kind of have some separation there if you would like.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. So one other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is the idea of what has been called a storefront agent, where essentially usually it's some kind of a chat interface where a customer, potential customer, can just chat with your store and ask questions about your products or maybe about your policies, or it might be like, what's the status of my order? And Shopify has, I guess, expanded their app that they've had for a while now called Shopify Inbox, which used to just be kind of like a live chat
Mhm.
messaging app, but now it's like AI powered and it can supposedly access all that information. So I'd say that's
That's
worth,
super interesting.
yeah, I'd say it's
Yeah.
worth looking into and trying. Although I will say my personal experience, whenever I am on a website and I have to like use the live chat, if I ever have to talk to an AI, it like never does what I need it to, and I'm always just like, human, talk to a human.
Hmm.
So I think you probably want to test it and be careful that you're not like alienating your audience by having an AI tool that doesn't work well.
Yeah.
But worth testing probably at least.
Yeah, so you definitely want to be somewhat careful depending on what you're doing. Yeah, I know that one of my clients uses Gorgias. Have
Yeah.
you have you seen them? And that's like kind of AI powered now, isn't it?
Oh yeah. So we have one of our clients has just been like really happy with how Gorgeous has transformed the whole backside of their operation, because they have a fairly complex manufacturing process where a customer's order comes in, then it kind of goes through this sort of custom build process, and the customer's always like contacting them, asking like, what's the status, where is it in the process? And they were able to use Gorgeous to sort of tie all that together and like answer most of their customers' questions about their order status, just using the data that's available through like the API and through the AI tools. So
Hmm.
I guess Gorgeous can then look at the order details. It can look at like the order notes and tags to see like what's the status that's been tagged on here, and then surface that. So that's been pretty cool. I've heard mixed reviews of Gorgeous overall,
Hmm.
um, but apparently it's working well in this case at least.
Yeah. And then what's the difference between that, or is there a difference with that and the agentic storefront agent, like natively with Shopify? Because that's like the inbox kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same idea where it's like a front-facing chat interface that then can look through the data on the back end and then chat with the customer. So
Hmm.
I imagine it's probably differences of features and settings and like maybe how customizable it is, or maybe some of the integrations. I think Gorgeous has a lot of integrations,
Hmm.
and it's like a full service, like customer support ticketing system, which I think is a lot more robust than what Inbox does.
Yeah. And probably more expensive as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so depending on your use case, you may want to go with the Shopify one. Yeah, I've always found that interesting. I also found it interesting that Shopify they kind of like bundled the agent on the store with like the agentic commerce, even though this feels like quite different ideas of like having an agent that helps you on the store
Mhm.
versus like when you're actually chatting with ChatGPT or your personal
Yeah.
agent.
Mhm.
And so I just find that interesting.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this stuff is very early, and people are excited about. Well, I think there's a lot of there's like these polarized opinions. A lot of people love AI, a lot of people hate it, and I think there are good points on both sides. But I think it's very early to say like how are people actually going to use this successfully? How is it actually going to help businesses? And we're kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall right now and seeing what's actually going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. And so it seems like overall with AI stuff, have your content out as many places as you can, have your brand as many places as you can. And one interesting aspect is Common Crawl. Have you heard of Common Crawl before?
Just a little bit, yeah.
So Common Crawl is like a, version of the internet, you can think of it. It's a nonprofit and it's an free open repository of web crawl data, they say. And essentially like all the internet is like a crawl, essentially like Google, not internet, but it's essentially like Google is like a crawl. And it's essentially a huge database of information. But Common Crawl is one of those that's most of the AI companies used as their initial training database. So whatever's in Common Crawl, you have a pretty good idea that it would be
Mm.
in the training data of the AIs as well. So you can like we've been playing around with that of just figuring out because you can it's an open source thing, so you can like download it if you want. And you can look at like what kind of stuff would be in an AI's brain almost, or in its data set. Because yeah, most of them start with Common Crawl. That's what ChatGPT did to start building their infrastructure with all the information. Outside of that, it's a lot of search stuff. So sure, everybody that uses AI has seen it search like half of the questions you ask it. It just like searches on
Mhm.
whatever engine it's using, and it'll just tell you, hey, I'm looking for the best kayaks, or I'm looking
Yeah.
for, information on how to build a plank or whatever it is.
Yeah. So it's very closely tied together with SEO still. Like, SEO is still very much like relevant, I think, with how these tools work.
Yeah, definitely. I think AI in general is interesting because I feel like, a word that comes to my mind is information retrieval, which is like originally like a search engine is an information retrieval system, right? You're retrieving information. And I think the AI is just like an evolution of that.
Mhm.
And so like really it's, what information is out there about you, and how can you optimize that?
Yeah, for
And how
sure.
can you make it readily available and easy to crawl, easy to understand for machines? And so it's like same game as it kind of always has been, you know?
Mhm.
But definitely different, but like the core ideas are still the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think to recap as we wrap up, there are some really basic things that probably everybody should do and can do fairly easily. So just go into your agentic channel in Shopify, make sure it's set up there and pulling in your products, and then like take time to fill in those product fields. Your category, the category meta fields, your SKU, all of that, to just give these tools like the data that they need to actually start talking about you when it's relevant to the things that people are asking about. And I think that's like the core essential. And then beyond that, it's like having good content, good descriptions, all of that. And I'll just note that we're only a few months out now as we record from Black Friday and Cyber Monday and like the busiest shopping season. So
Yeah.
I think now is the right time to be like starting this
Hmm.
and getting ready, and don't wait if you haven't done this stuff yet.
Yep. 100%. And if you are interested in the AI visibility, I have a free audit.patrickiceco.com. I just created it because I have this tool and I'm like it's like I built it. So and these profounds and stuff are like $400.
Mm.
So there's a form on there. If you want me to just run the AI visibility on anything, I can just run it on my Claude, send you the report,
Nice.
and that can be useful just to get a idea of where you're at with visibility on some of these platforms. Sometimes I've seen people in there, they're like talking about like AEO, GEO, and all this stuff. They need to be on the AIs, and then I run it, and I'm like, Oh, like you already are. Like
Yeah.
you have great SEO, so you have pretty good AEO and GEO. So yeah, it's always interesting to see these things.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can wrap it up there for today. So I guess I'll mention again, I'm Leighton Taylor, and my website is envision.io. If you need any help with store design and development, conversion rate and optimization, all that stuff, I'd be happy to speak with you.
Yeah. Yeah, Leighton's great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the time, and talk to you next week.
All right. Thanks, Patrick. See you next time.